Welcome to Glaze of the Week. I'm Sean Jackson here on Serene Ceramics. If you're interested in supporting the station, look into supporting us on Patreon. On Patreon, you can find us as the Clay Station Podcast or Claystation_podcast. This is our podcast channel, which is a division of Serene Ceramics. So on a Clay Station Podcast, basically what we do, we interview artists and present their knowledge and technical information to you. What are we doing here today? We are doing Glaze of the Week. So what glaze recipe do I have for you today? We have a green glaze recipe. We have a earthenware glaze recipe. We have a Aurobert style glaze recipe. What does it look like? Okay, let me bring that up for you now. Okay, so we have this here on the right. A couple of years ago, I was looking into developing new glaze recipes, and in particular on the earthenware or cone 03 temperature range. So cone 03, what is that? That is 1100 degrees Celsius, or as our lovely American viewers would go, 2014 degrees Fahrenheit. Which one are we talking about here? We got two glaze recipes. I'm talking about the one on the right. The one on the left didn't really work out. It was too dry. I tried firing it higher and we had issues with it pinholing. So don't look at the one on the left. We're looking at the one on the right. Although you could probably test it yourself. And with all of our glaze recipes that we share with you here on Serene Ceramics, what you want to be doing, you have to test, and retest your glaze recipes to find out if they are suitable to your clay body. So materials in every country are different and clay bodies are different in every country. So what you want to do if you're making anything yourself up from scratch, you want to test to make sure that it fits. And if you don't know what that means, watch our other videos. We're on Serene Ceramics and Glaze of the Week. The top two glaze test tiles. The top one was fired a little bit lower at 1060 degrees. Is about at cone 04. And the B test tile glaze, the lower one, that was fired at 1100 degrees Celsius or cone 03. You can see that there is a difference between those two glazes. The top one is a little bit darker. It's a little bit unmatured. The glaze surface is not as glossy. There are some issues there. You want to let your glaze mature correctly. So it has to fire at the correct glaze temperature. As you can see, B glaze is more vivid. It's more substantial in its depth. And its surface is much more glassier. That's what you want to be. You want to fire at the correct glaze temperature. Moving on from matured versus unmatured glaze test tiles, what's actually in this glaze? Core foundation of this glaze, in its flux, we have the Frit F4064. That's Ferrofrit F4064. And we also have Cornish stone, the mix between the two. And then next we have China clay, or you can also use EPK Kaolin. Kaolin clay will be fine as well. It's exactly the same thing. It's just different names. We also have whiting to add as our colorants. We have copper oxide at 2 and cobalt oxide at 0.5. Why did we add cobalt? Cobalt turns blue, obviously, right? So why did we add cobalt to this glaze? Copper by itself is actually quite vivid. What we were trying to do here is create a Aurobert style glaze. So what is Aurobert? Aurobert is a Japanese glaze. It's a copper concentrated glaze. It's usually fired at a much higher temperature traditionally. Traditionally, it'll be fired at cone 10 or 1300 degrees. Or like in America, 2380 degrees. Basically, it's a very traditional type of glaze in Japan where it comes out dark green and with a slight translucency to it, but usually it'll be slightly darker as well. So to create that effect in a lower temperature, we actually need to add a bit of cobalt to create that depth to it. So that's why we've added the tiny bit of cobalt. Copper too, it's not too high. If you keep going too much higher, you're actually change your glaze from a slight opacity or semi-translucency into actually a full opacity the higher that you go with your oxides. And then if you go too high, it'll be a oxide saturated glaze where it'll start to metallicize. Anyway, we're at the correct balance here. That's the main thing. Yeah, I'm very happy to share this glaze with you today. It's a very dark gloss green, but it is basically it's an imitation Aurobert glaze for a lower temperature. So I'm very happy to share this with you today. I'm not going to go into too much time about it. You can go on to test it yourself. I did fire this in an oxidation environment in a electric kiln. If you're interested to know about that, it was not gas fired, it was not wood fired, it was fired in a electric kiln. So that might be a good thing to know. What else can I tell you about this glaze? It was fired on a white earthenware clay body. These test tiles are white earthenware clay. Again, you want to test it on your own clay body to see how it fares. And there's not much more I can tell you about that. I'm happy to share this with you today, and I wish you to have a beautiful, blessed week. I'm Sean Jackson, and this is Serene Ceramics. Cheers.